Support Name Explain on Patreon for ad-free videos, exclusive podcasts and blog posts, and to help choose what names get explained. Click the link in the description.
Foods get their names in all sorts of ways. Some foods are named after their creator or someone important to them, like how tartatin is named after the Tatin sisters who created it. And some foods are named after the way they're cooked, like fried chicken or steamed hams. Though one other way in which food is named is it being named after the part of the world it is from. There are so many foods which are named after parts of the world. I'll be honest with you, some of them are pretty darn obvious, like Yorkshire puddings, Peking duck, or Turkish delight. Sometimes, however, the food grows to be more popular than the place it's named after, meaning the name gets more linked with the food than the place itself. So today, not only do I want to cover foods that are named after parts of the world, but more accurately, I want to cover foods you didn't know were named after parts of the world. Or maybe you knew they were named after these parts of the world, especially if you happen to live in these places. And of course, I'll explain how these parts of the world got their names too. This is supposed to be a geography video after all, not a random food video. Let's kick things off with a type of cheese. It seems most cheeses are named after the part of the world they are from. And as I said, some of these are pretty obvious, like Swiss cheese. So while we could cover any cheese here, I want to cover perhaps the most popular cheese there is. Cheddar cheese. While I imagine this word of cheddar is most linked with the cheese, if you were to visit the English county of Somerset, you may come across the village of Cheddar. The cheese was first created here before being popularised across the globe. The village of Cheddar is perhaps best known for Cheddar Gorge, an impressive looking natural site with caves that are ideal for aging cheese in. As to where the name of this village comes from, the only info I could find on it comes from Wikipedia. Wiki claims that the name comes from the Sanskrit chada, which means a dark cavity or pouch, which I suppose makes sense as the village is known for the dark cavities of its nearby caves, but how a Sanskrit place name ended up in Somerset, I'm not too sure. As mentioned, pretty much every cheese is named after somewhere, and just to emphasize this point, I want to cover one more, that being Camembert. This lovely French cheese is named after the tiny commune where it was first produced. Camembert is in the region of Normandy. From what I can gather, this place is tiny, with a population of just under 200 people. I imagine this commune would be somewhat forgotten if it weren't for the birth of this marvellous cheese. As for how the commune got its name, it seems to be of medieval Latin roots. In this language, it was initially called Campus Maimberliti, which means Field of Maimber, with Maimber being a Germanic first name. We don't seem to be too sure who exactly this Maimber is, but they must have owned the land the town was founded on, and somehow their name lives on in this tiny settlement, and it's enormously popular cheese. Let's go back to England, however. This video could really be me sharing the names of just weird British food, but that's a video for another time. I want to focus on a dessert from my home nation, that being the Bakewell tart, which is an adaptation of the older Bakewell pudding. This is a pastry-based dessert, meaning that it needs to be baked, so logically it must be named after the fact that it's a tart that is baked well, right? Well, considering the premise of this video, I'm sure you know that that isn't the case. There's actually a town in Derbyshire here in England called Bakewell, where this tart was created and in turn named after. So how did the town get its name? Is it named after the fact that the town is known for baking things well? Not quite. It seems to come from the Old English first name of Baedeker, with the well part meaning spring or stream. Well is a word we still link with water to this day, so the name means Baedeker Spring. It is just a massive coincidence that a town called Bakewell has become well known for a tart named after their town, which is baked well. Let's go a tad further afield now and look into the beloved jalapenos, the little pepper that packs something of a punch. What's interesting about this one is that it isn't so much a dish made of multiple ingredients but a single food. It's especially interesting as it's a culinary vegetable, which should normally have names of more ancient obscure origins. That isn't so much the case with the jalapeno, however. This is a food of Mexican origin, meaning they have a Spanish name, and the name jalapeno means from Jalapa in Spanish, with Jalapa being the capital city of the Mexican state of Veracruz. The pepper is clearly from this part of Mexico originally. This city's name comes from Nahuatl, with the language's words for sand and water, so the name is thought to mean something like a spring in the sand, which sounds very idyllic and oasis-like. The name of this town is often seen spelt with a J too. The whole X and J thing being mixed in Spanish is something we talked about in a recent Fun with First Names video, which you should all go watch. Sticking with our 5 a day, we have the tangerine, a small orange citrus fruit. This is a name that is pretty commonplace around the world. However, it roots to a city in the North African nation of Morocco, that being the city of Tangier. It was in this port city where the fruit was first cultivated, so in turn named after it. Who would have thought that these little oranges so commonplace have a name from Morocco? What's interesting about this one, however, is the variety of names this city went under in the past. Roman sources have this city called Tenga, Tinga, Titka, and even Tingis, with ideas of it originally relating to it meaning marshland, to it being named after a minor Greek mythological figure, Tingius. If the city is stuck with one of those names, who knows what the fruit might be called today? Tangerines? Tangerines? It's one of the big what ifs of Name Explain. I should make an alternate history video on it or something. Let's move on, shall we, though, to the wonderful world of curry. Here in the UK, we have a very interesting relationship with curries. While they are a dish from the Indian subcontinent, a lot of the specific kind of curries we have here were actually pioneered in the UK, though despite being created here, they have names of Indian origin. A great example is with the Madras, a somewhat spicy curry. There are ideas that this curry was created in India, however some believe it was created here in the UK. Either way, that name is of Indian origin, with Madras being a city in southern India. Well, it used to be. Now the city goes by a different name, Chennai. That previous name of Madras, however, is thought to possibly come from a variety of origins. One idea is that it comes from the name of an underworld god, while another idea is that it comes from an Arabic word for school, which are very different ideas, that's for sure. Either way, the name was applied to the curry, and it seems that the curry didn't get a name change along with the city. As for our next food, despite its name sounding similar to a certain French emperor, and the food having a similar design to the French tricolour, Neapolitan ice cream doesn't relate to France. While we don't seem to be too sure where exactly this ice cream came from initially, it seems that Italians have been credited with its creation, specifically Italians from the city of Naples, as Neapolitan is the adjective for the city's name and means relating to the city of Naples. Naples is actually the city's name in English. In Italian, the city is called Napoli, which sounds more like its original Greek name of Neapolis. It's from this Greek name that we can start to figure out the city's name's meaning, as this Greek name is made up of the Greek neo, meaning new, and polis, meaning city, so the name simply means new city. I always get irritated where someone has a name that means something simple like new town or new city. It just doesn't seem like a very future-proof way of naming somewhere. It's not going to be new forever. Though maybe that's just me who finds that annoying, as I spend way too much time looking at place names. Next up, we have perhaps the most famous example of a food being named after somewhere, that being the hamburger. Yes, despite being called a hamburger, it's made of beef, not ham. The ham in hamburger, and the berg part for that matter, relates to the city of Hamburg in Germany. Residents of the city of Hamburg actually created the concept of serving beef like this, thanks to seeing people in Asia doing it during their explorations. And when Germans immigrated to the States, they brought this style of beef with them. It was stateside that the beef got put between two buns, and the hamburger as we all know it today was born. As for the city, the berg part we see in many city names and means things like castle and fort. The ham part is thought to derive from the old High German hammer, which meant back of the knee and came to mean bends as a whole. The bend it's thought to reference in the name is a bend in the river where the city is. Something I find so interesting about the word hamburger is how we've clipped it to just burger and added the name of whatever we put in it to the front, like chicken burger, beef burger, and veggie burger. I guess this all comes from misunderstanding the ham in the initial name and thinking that relates to the meat kind of ham. Also, pretty much the exact same story can be applied to a kind of sausage too. Except replace Hamburg with Frankfurt and hamburger with Frankfurter. Key lime pie is another beloved dessert, which of course is made from limes, though traditionally it's made from a specific kind of lime. Key limes. Key is a pretty generic word. What makes these limes so key? Is it because they're the key ingredient in the pie? Well, as good as that would be, it doesn't really seem to be the case. Of course, the key in key lime pie relates to a location, with that location being the Florida Keys, the archipelago off the southern tip of the state. The pie and the lime were popularized on these islands and in turn named after them. And the reason these islands are called keys is because the name comes from the Spanish Callao, meaning small islands, with Callao being anglicized into keys. Next up, the butter bean. And while a lot of us call them butter beans, they also go by another name too, lima beans. What's interesting about this one is that we pronounce this word differently when using it for the beans, when compared to how we pronounce the place it's named after. If we were to call the beans lima beans, things might start to make a tad more sense. These beans are named after the capital city of Peru. The beans were grown here and exported around the world. Wikipedia even has a cute little story about crates of these beans with Lima, Peru written on them, and that's how the city's name became their name. As to how the city got its name, one theory is that it's a Spanish corruption of the native word rima, meaning to speak. It's named after this verb, as this verb went into the creation of the name of a native god and his temple, Rimac. As it was in these temples, priests would talk to the god. Finally, I want to end with a food you probably think is named after a part of the world, but actually isn't. That being French toast. A recipe for something like French toast existed before France as we know it was even a thing. Romans had a dish which was very similar to French toast, which involved soaking bread in milk and egg and frying it. One story as to how French toast got its name is thanks to a Mr. Joseph French, an innkeeper in New York who put the dish on his menu in the 18th century and named it after himself. It really should be French's toast. This is just an idea, however. It may even just be a folk etymology, but it's a story I enjoy nonetheless. Anyway, is anyone else hungry now, or is that just me? Tasty place names were suggested by Sebastian, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explain's patron saint of tasty place names. Do you have a good idea for somewhere that's name could be covered in a Name Explain video? If so, then please consider donating on Patreon. Just $1 a month helps keep the channel running and earns you a weekly chance to suggest somewhere to be turned into a video, and you too could be a Name Explain Patreon saint. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. You can find me on Twitter, where I'm at NameExplainYT. On Instagram, I'm also NameExplainYT, and on Facebook, just search Name Explain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.